The inside planking is fastened right in the middle of the plank in the middle of the frame. This puts that fastener right at the seam in the outer planking so that the outer planking fasteners will not crash into them. After the outer planking is fit and clamped into position, all of the planks are pre-drilled. The floor-to-frame bolts are carefully plotted so that when we put the plank screws in, we don't run into those. Also, we don't put plank fasteners where the keel strapping is going to go. We'll temporarily clamp that and fasten that when the keel strapping is put on. After all the fastener holes are drilled and the inside of the planking is marked for the frame locations, the planking is taken down. We sand off any burrs that have been made while drilling the fastener holes, vacuum and clean the planks, and make them ready to install. To install double planking, we use all types of very expensive, time-sensitive, sticky stuff. And if a well-choreographed routine isn't thought out for this maneuver, it can be a big, sticky, expensive, ugly mess. We use two basic types of adhesive. The TC 4207 by BJB Enterprises, the same epoxy that we use gluing up the frames. We use this between the layers of planking. Where the inner planking lays against the frames and the back rabbets, we use 5200. I have found that the polyurethane adhesives work best where the grains are perpendicular to each other. They will accept quite a bit of movement and still hold fast. Also, there's plenty of working time with 5200 for assembly. We apply the 5200 with electric caulking guns and serrated trowels. The polyurethane adhesives are much too viscous to use between the layers of planking. This makes it very difficult to clamp and fasten tight enough to avoid voids and air bubbles. Also, because of its extended cure time, there would be a delay in installing the next run of planking. The epoxy we use between the planking has about a 1 hour working time at 70 degrees. Every 10-degree increase in temperature cuts the working time in half. It is now summertime in Southern California. Average temperatures are 80 degrees. We developed some very clever procedures and techniques so we wouldn't get stuck with a mess on our hands. We first would only do our glue-ups in the morning, the coolest part of the day. We would pre-mark and measure the epoxy. We would mix the epoxy in small batches as we needed it. If epoxy is left to stand in a container, it creates heat, it exotherms, and this starts the curing process and shortens the working time. So we would get it out of the containers and onto wood pallets straight away. We applied the epoxy with serrated trowels. By trimming down the peaks of the serrates, we could gauge the trowels so they would put just the right amount of glue on. This was very important for the cleanup part of this. The epoxy was applied to all the surfaces that we were gluing together. And there was no time to dilly-dally or mess around. We had to get that run of planking up, fastened, and the excess glue cleaned off so we could go to lunch. Work our way up the hull, yet another step in the planking process is to coat the inside of the planking, the frames, and all the areas that we can't get to once the planking's on with red lead primer. This will discourage mold growth and rot in those areas that are completely inaccessible once the planking is installed. Now, patient viewer, yes, there's a lot to this, and it seems like it'll never end. But one day, the last plank is filed and cut out. It is then fit into place and pre-drilled. We call the owner and a bunch of friends and celebrate the whiskey plant. The whiskey gets poured, the last batch of glue gets mixed, and the owner gets to put in the last fastener.
Some of these screws are the old screws, right? They're reused?
No.
They're all new?
Yep.
Some of them don't have such good heads.
Yeah. There's the operator blaming the equipment.
Exactly. It must be the screws' fault. There's something wrong with these screws, Wayne.
Now you see what I deal with every day.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason why I don't get fired off this job.
With a double planked hull like this is a real celebration because we don't have to go back and recock. Chubasco is now a watertight vessel. It's not over yet though. We still have to fair the hull, install the centerboard and the rudder, and put in the through hulls. This video was brought to you by efforts through the Maritime Preservation Trust. Don't forget to subscribe, and please visit our website.